proposed tonight, and we'll take additions or deletions to that.
And move to approve the agenda as submitted.
Do I get a second?
Second.
All opposed? Motion carried. We have meeting minutes to approve from our last meeting. If we could take a look at those. We had an August 21st meeting, and then on September 18th, the commission had a study session to also review those minutes.
Brian asked me to add keep in contact with Wayne County Bridge Company to the our short, medium, and long-term goals, so I have added that.
Are there any other additions or changes to the meeting minutes?
I move to approve the meeting minutes as amended.
Second. All opposed? Motion carried. The next item on the agenda is a letter that we received from our public comments talking about problems with stop signs and the placements of stop signs throughout the island. The resident, who will remain nameless, sent a letter with some pictures showing a couple examples of where a stop sign was placed before the bike path, and suggested that the stop sign get relocated, actually because it was past the bike path but before the oncoming road on Meridian. Eric, you were going to reach out to the Chief of Police on that?
Yeah, so we've got a copy of the letter to the Chief of Police, and he's going to investigate. The initial thought is that it seems like this is within the universal or uniform traffic code, but the Chief was going to check into this and we can get an official response back.
So we'll have an official response by next meeting?
Yes.
Thank you.
Rob, what about
yes.
Did the Chief talk about the bushes at South Point? Those are in the right of way, in my opinion.
He didn't mention that, but I can discuss that with him and DPS and determine what the right course of action is.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other comments on the letter? All right, moving along. The next item was the fact that we'd had some discussions about the Grosse Ile Free Bridge pavement conditions. We'd had a presentation here a couple months ago, which was a very good presentation, and it stirred some comments and some thoughts. And we presented that presentation to Wayne County, and we also presented that per the request of the gentleman from Fowlerville who passed away. His family had requested a copy of that as well, so we provided that for them.
I think the next step on this is just to make sure that this gets forwarded on to Wayne County. So I'm not sure if we have any volunteers to work with that, or actually I can take that. I'll talk with Barry and determine how we can get this forwarded onto the county.
Okay, Eric, you'll take that to make sure that Wayne County gets
Yep.
that. All right, thank you. The next item is the BPAC assessment. Alan, do you have any updates on that?
Currently, we haven't done anything further on the BPAC assessment. We felt that it will set in recess until the weather closes in on us, and we can start exploring it during the winter months. So at this point, what we'll do is I would like to maybe start planning study sessions to start reviewing it and forwarding the appropriate requests to the department heads that will be needed to answer some of the questions we have on it. So at this point, we're just sitting pat on it until at least the weather changes and everything slows down on the bike path, and we can focus more on it.
All right. I know we talked about it in our study session, which we'll talk about in a few minutes, so I'd like to talk a little bit more about it at that time, how we can move forward with that. One of the big things that is on our agenda and one of our short-term goals is the horse mill shared usage path. Mr. Bailey, do you have any updates on that?
As I believe all of you know, we had a bid opening on the 4th, I believe. Anyways, the bids came in approximately 25% higher than the engineering estimate, significantly higher than the previous year from December of 2011. Most of the unit prices increased. Some of the unit prices increased 250%. In addition, there was a question of how balanced the bids were. I can't really explain why things were done the way they were. I can tell you that based on the apparent low bidder, who I believe is Campo Brothers, funding will be, right now we don't have adequate funding. The portion that the DPS agreed to pay for was the intersection, as you all know, at Park and Horse Mill, including all the drainage issues that were there. That can go ahead because there is enough money from the DPS Commission to go ahead with that. And in fact, that portion actually came out lower than the engineering estimate, which is interesting. In addition, I have talked to the engineer and I have talked to Mr. Sedlock, and I'm waiting to hear back from Barry and Ann about funding sources or additional funding availability. But I was also told that the $274,000 number that I was given as funds available may in fact be $30,000, $35,000, $40,000 less than that, because there was a commitment, I believe, to the Safe Sidewalk, whatever that those people are, to give them money out of the bicycle fund, which was unbeknownst to me. I don't know when that was done or if it was done, but I haven't got confirmation on that. Barry and I have talked informally or over the phone about that. And he was going to check with Ann in finance and see exactly where we were and what our options were. So at this point, the tentative schedule that I hope you all received is probably out the window. And funding for the path is in jeopardy, period. I have given, I think it's in your packet, the bid breakdown, and in addition I have given you a copy of last year's bids so you can check the unit prices, recognizing the fact that the project was reduced in scope, primarily because of the width, but also with regard to the sub-base and base and some things like that. So that's all I have at this time. Eric, have you heard anything?
Yes, I was able to speak with Ann this afternoon, just after our budget review, and she went through the funding obligations, and at the end of the day, there's a couple of discrepancies from the Safe Routes School that we're still, not really discrepancies, but there's a couple of issues we're still debating with Wayne County on the final funding of that, close to the tune of $140,000. So we're working to resolve that, and I think that we really need that resolved before we make a recommendation on this project. Right now, it appears we've got enough money to go from Meridian to from Meridian to Canal, but not the entire project. However, with successful resolution of the Safe Routes to school, it looks like we potentially have enough funding to complete the entire project. So I think right now, you're right, Gary, getting it done this year is going to be a little over-optimistic. But I am planning on working with the treasurer to get these other issues ironed out so that we can have a positive outcome and know exactly where we're at come the first of the year. And in the meantime, the treasurer and I will also sit down with Sohail and go through the differences between the two bids, because the second bid really surprised me, to be honest with you.
I think it surprised several of us that were monitoring this situation.
Yeah, I would expect a couple of the unit prices to potentially be higher, but the amount that it jumped is...
And they were consistent, too, if you look at the other contractors. So that's, I don't know what to make of any of that. There's also the possibility of a pre-award addendum to modify the contract, which is what you would have to do, I believe, if you stopped it at Canal Street. And Sohail and I had an informal conversation about that well over a week ago. But until the money gets pinned down, I'm reluctant to spend a lot of engineering time. I don't know how Rains bills the township, but if they're spinning their wheels, I assume they're going to want to get paid, and there's no point in that.
Yeah, that's a very good point. At the end of the day, we're not going to have to cut ground right now based on where we're at. There's still more study that needs to be done. If we get things answered, in the January time frame, I think it's still possible to have this thing in after the first frost is out in the spring. So I would recommend that we table this basically, and with the intention of coming back in January with a recommendation to the board. So two things will have happened by then. Number one is we'll have the Safe Routes funding completely identified out of this project, and then the second aspect is we'll have had another opportunity to go down or go through it with the engineers and figure out exactly why this jumped up as much as it did. And I think after those two things are complete, then this commission can sit down and come up with a realistic recommendation to the board for their approval.
And you mentioned you spoke to the treasurer, who's also on the DPS commission.
Yes.
Did they indicate they were going to go forward at this time with that portion of the intersection?
He did not indicate that. I suspect that they'll wait on this based on what we're going to do.
Yeah, and I don't know that that's an issue for us at this present time. That's why we bid it separately. And we tried to, I have the pre-bid meeting here, we tried to express that to the potential contractors, the potential bidders at the pre-bid meeting, that could go independently.
Yeah, and in your bid package, you'll see that there's the base bid and the alternate bid.
Exactly.
The alternate bid is the intersection work that we're talking about, drainage at Horse Mill and Park Lane.
Correct. And yeah, I'll be glad to do whatever anybody thinks is required on our end to keep this on track. But
yeah, so I definitely appreciate you being the point person on this as well. I think it just can be a matter of pushing this through with those two issues.
Okay, thank you.
Now, the bidding, the pricing, how long is it good for? What's the expiration date?
Typically 60 to 90 days.
So we had that time frame to make a decision.
Yeah, so the 90 days gets us into the January time frame as well.
I don't know what the contract documents say on that.
Yeah, 90 days is what sticks in the back of my mind.
Mine too, but I'm not, I didn't read the documents in detail. Maybe I should have. And I can confirm that with Sohail the next day or so. But
Now, before we go on, PAC. When is it due for next year? The PAC.
Gene, I believe it's due July 1st. So we have more than adequate time.
Okay.
We just didn't prioritize it to do it now. We'd rather just wait until we're less busy during the winter season. And of course, that extends all the way to the department heads also. They'll have more free time to work with us, so that helps us all the way around.
Okay.
Yeah, at our study session, we realized, or we talked about that in depth, Jane, and one of the things we realized is we're going to have a lot of input from a lot of department heads to help us facilitate the completion of that questionnaire in depth. And so in order to do that, we need to kind of wait till through the holiday season and get going with it. So we can do some planning, but we really need to schedule that out January, February, March timeframe.
Okay.
I was wondering if I could jump back to the horse mill. Gary, I have a question. Did we receive bids from the original 5 companies that Barry received bids from, or just the 3 lowest? Because he said that he received bids from 5 companies, and then what he gave us in our packets, I guess a few months ago, was only the 3 lowest. So I'm just wondering if we included all 5.
I've got 5 bids.
There were 5 bids,
Yeah.
I'm looking for my...
There's Florence Cement Company, Al's Asphalt Paving Company, Campo Brothers, Erie Construction LLC, and Pavex Corporation. So yes, it's the 3 lowest were presented to us, but all 5 did bid.
I believe the high bid was right around 490, close to 500,000. So we had a range basically from 390 plus or minus to 490 plus or minus is my recollection. But they only, you're right, the packet only has the low 3.
Kind of the Greenway, could they be part of it in terms of budgeting? The Greenway path thing? No,
Greenbelt?
Greenway. That goes from like Monroe to all the way to Southfield. They're trying to develop a road. Could they be part of the budget?
So that's a good question. I think what you're talking about is the linked greenways, the linked greenways project.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good question. I don't know what the source of that funding is.
Maybe like Trenton and Wyandotte, they can work together to make it happen for Grosjean. It's kind of a nice place to bike. It's just an idea. Maybe more of a community-wide involvement.
Gene, I do hope that we start mingling with them when we start investigating the PAC involvement. So I think ultimately our goal was to connect to that. So eventually we're going to interact with them. I just have a hard time saying right now when that's going to be.
Someday.
Well, and I think a lot of that's from the people on the other side of the river. The people in Trenton have to express a willingness to connect to the bridge, if you will. And that connector, I don't know how much that impacts the citizens of Trenton. I suspect not as much as it impacts the citizens of Grosse Ile. Hence, there may be some reluctance on their part, but you'd have to check with them, I guess.
What's a thought?
That's a good thought.
So that's all I have on the horseshoe bike path. And Gary, unless you have any more.
No, I said enough.
Okay, so just to make sure that I'm aware of the next steps for the horse mill bike path is, Eric, you're going to help try to clarify the questions we have on the funding, and we'll try to get that put to rest. And then Mr. Bailey will continue to shadow any follow-ups that we will need on the bidding process.
Yep.
And our goal is to, by the end of the year, 1st of January, to have something in place that we can bring back here for our January meeting to approve and then present to the board for approval, so that early spring we hopefully can get the bike path laid there. All right. The next item was discussions on our study session that we had. The group met as a study session at our last meeting, and our goals were to identify short, medium, and long-term goals for this team here, and then also start to look at prioritizing our short-term goals and figuring out when it would be appropriate to start to address those. So for those of you at home, I will run through some of the goals. I won't go through the entire list of them, and I will tell you the ones that we deemed as a priority for the first year. Our short-term goal was the 1 year. We will provide you this list on our website if you're interested in the near future, so you can go in and see all the goals that we have identified and what our thinking was. So just as a quick review of those, we had goals set up into 3 columns: short, which was within a year; medium, 2 to 5 years; and long-term goals, 5 or more years. Some of our short-term goals was the completion of the horse mill bike path, which we've just talked about a few moments ago. Another one was to develop a maintenance plan for the entire bike path. Other goals, short-term, were to have a policy that would include open space trails and look at bike racks and storage within the island and determine where those would need to be added. And then also looking for general safety guidelines, such as what we talked about tonight with the stop signs. And then also identifying opportunities for education and outreach to the community. And then lastly was the creation of the BPAC assessment, which we talked about a few minutes ago, and I'll get the resolution with the board on that. Now, the BPAC assessment is going to take a long time to do. It's not one of those quick, easy fixes or 4 or 6, 8 hours that any one person can do. I know Alan's looked at it and started it, and as was explained to us at our last meeting, that we are going to need a lot of input from a lot of people who have a lot of knowledge outside of this group here. And a lot of those will be the department heads of the township, and so we'll have to schedule time with individual department heads to pull information from them to help fill out the assessment. So those were our priorities for our first year. There were additional priorities that we would like to get to. One of them that Jane mentioned was tying into the parkways and a few other things like that, helping create more dialogue amongst people walking and biking and using the trails and pathways, and also putting up mileage indicators on the paths so you would know how many miles you've walked, and working with roads and signs, which we talked about earlier too. There's been a lot of discussion about the inappropriate usage of signs on the bike paths, whether they should be yield or stop, the height, etc. So those were all some of the things that we'd like to look at in the next year. Medium goals, which were 2 to 5 years. We talked about funding, how to improve funding, how to be able to apply for grants and get grants, looking and reviewing some of the ordinances we have, and making the BPAC assessment rating, get that in and hopefully get it up to a bronze level status at least. And then also identifying other opportunities for bike paths and through areas such as open space or even other areas on the island that would maybe look for bike paths and talk about millages. Lastly, we wanted to get some recognition for our bike paths and things through the League of American Bicyclists, and even talked about planning and holding some state level bike and pedestrian events in the future. So those were some of the things that we talked about, prioritized some of them, and we'll be working towards a lot of them in the next 12 months. Again, this will be on our website in the near future, so you can look at the full listing if you're so inspired. Any other comments?
I do have one. On Friday, I will attend a meeting in Lansing given by the Michigan League of Bicyclists. The class helps you to regulate the bike path, gives you some guidelines. It's a little bit of networking. They give you pretty much an entry-level amount of training on just doing exactly what we're doing, how to maintain it, sign it, regulate it. So I will attend that Friday and have input on our next meeting.
Well, that'd be great. How did you hear about that, Alan?
I got it through an email at work. I joined them when I joined BPAC, and they just gave it to me, and my chief authorized me to go to it on Friday. So I'll be in Lansing attending that on Friday.
Great. look forward to seeing the review on that. Next item is listing of a lot of miscellaneous items that we have here. I know one of the things that we talked about was park benches and fountains. There's been talk about adding some park benches to the bike paths from a couple different groups. I don't know if anyone has an update on that. I think Brian was leading that discussion. So we'll table that till he comes back next month. Fountains, Mr. Bailey?
As I understand it, there are 2 proposals or inquiries to Mr. Sedlock or Mr. Ream on potential fountains, and I haven't seen an inquiry to this commission asking for our input as to where the location should be, if we care or not, and I need to follow up on that, I guess. But there are potentially 2 more fountains to come at some point. I assume the construction will be next year. And that's all donated money by a couple different groups. We just kicking it around, anybody that's got a good idea, but we had thought primarily the south end, since there is a water fountain at Church, the Steve Sims fountain, and there's one right at the intersection there near the gazebo. So I don't believe there's anything down this way. So if anybody's got any ideas, just let me know, and I'll follow up with Barry or Dale and see where we are, and whether we need a formal action item to go ahead with this or not. Questions? Yeah.
Kerry, I would like to open that up to suggesting that we open it up to the Scouts to see if they'd like to make an Eagle Scout project.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
I'll follow up on that.
Sure. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Bailey, the next item is yours too, mile markers. Do you have any update on that?
It's just something Brian and I had discussed, that it would be nice to have. We had them, and again, I think that was an Eagle Scout project, I believe, many years ago. I don't even have a date on that, but I don't. I think the real question is, where do you want zero to be? Do you want it to grow and then go each way and due north, or do you want it at the intersection of Macomb and Meridian? Once that decision's made, I'm sure we can get some preliminary measurements from, using a wheel or whatever. But I don't know if the Scouts are interested in redoing that, or I'll defer. No.
I have 2 Scouts sitting right back there, live in my house, and they're very interested in their Eagle Scout projects.
Okay.
They look very interested.
You can tell they're thrilled to be here.
Excitement is overwhelming.
So we'll give them guidelines, maybe, set up everything we'd like to see in it, and maybe they could start a project on it.
But again, if anybody has a feeling of, where is zero? Once you tell me where zero is, I can measure pretty well. But whatever.
What about from the bridge?
The bridge.
Yeah, from the food bridge. I got on the island now.
But there's no bike path that connects to the food.
There's a shallow, a little bit on the side. There's a little bit of a bike trail on the side.
Yeah, but you can't. How are you going to mark? How are you going to paint the dirt, I guess?
Well, there's a little pavement. A little bit.
Yeah, but it's disconnected.
Maybe a shape of a bike. Don't you know?
I serve at the pleasure of the committee.
I actually agree with Jane, because I remember reading in the Free Press, it was, I think, before the marathon last year maybe, and they were talking about people where they like to train, and apparently people from all of these surrounding communities love to come to Grosse Ile to train. So it might be helpful to them if we had the 0 point at the bridge, but that might be more difficult to do, I'm not sure.
How about bridge to bridge?
Bridge to bridge?
Free to pay bridge.
I understand.
That would be a good way to calculate how many miles.
Well, it's roughly 13.5 miles if you do the loop, assuming from Row to East River up to the point back down West River. I believe it's about 13.5 miles. I know when I ride from my house, it's 14 to make the island. I'm assuming it's a half mile. plus or minus to get out of the subdivision. So, but you're right, people, I've talked to several cyclists as I've been out and seen people that come here from off island, and you'll see mini packs, I guess, I don't know how else to, what do you call a herd of bikers? I don't know. You know, I don't know what the herd, who knows? Well, yeah. So people do come here. You're absolutely right. I agree with it. So, all right.
There's the bridges is a good idea. Maybe the high school would be a good idea too, because I know a lot of people on Saturdays park there to start their walking and running.
The what is it? Grosvenor Runners Club, 8 o'clock every Saturday morning.
So maybe that would be the ground zero. I don't know, but maybe we should open this up to the public. If there's anybody out there that has an opinion,
anybody that's got an idea,
please shoot them to us via email or
go to the website.
There's actually part of the PAC asks that if your bike and pedestrian paths are marked by distance. So maybe we'll touch upon that when we work on the path.
Absolutely.
Or the PAC.
Yeah, there's nothing's carved in stone as far as I know.
Well, if you're still looking for suggestions, I think we let the Eagle Scouts ultimately decide where they wanted to go, but I would lobby for Macomb being 0, since that seems to be the one main destination.
Like I said, we don't have to decide. We just have to have.
Maybe we should have an election. We could debate this tonight. Free Bridge versus the high school. No, all right. All right. Aaron, I think the next couple items are yours on the agenda.
Okay, so we've mentioned a few times about, on this, the bullet point just says meridian path intersection site distance issues, but I think we've all heard that it's actually a much bigger undertaking. So I don't know if I'll be able to champion that one myself. I think we'll probably need to work together on that one. I guess I don't know the best way to approach it.
Well, I think we were looking for clarity on the rules and regulations from the chief on part of that, and then also DPS on clearing those other intersections, but maybe those answers of those two things will help us clarify.
Yeah, I guess I view that as one of the parts of the maintenance plan that we need to get put together.
Well, along those lines, I think the intersection at Meridian and Macomb is somewhat hazardous. The bike literature that I've been reading that Brian gave us all recommends that no right turn on red at that intersection would be a good idea, or at the very least a sign alerting, if you're northbound on Meridian, something saying, yield to pedestrians or something. There's no indication. I mean, there's a traffic light there and there's a pedestrian signal, and hopefully everybody's obeying it. But if you've got the right to go as a pedestrian, and somebody is coming northbound on Meridian and tries to turn right even though they've got a red light, or they would have a green light in that case, I guess. There's a potential conflict. I know I've been close once or twice myself.
So are you suggesting like a pedestrian crossing sign prior to that intersection?
Yeah, we have other, like on the golf course, there's a sign that says, the golf course crossing or golfers crossing, and there are other places that have a bike path sign. I mean, I think we have that down at Ferry.
Ferry, we do have a.
But I think one there, or no right turn on red or something, to just alert drivers that, there's a potential there. But that's just my thought.
Are you talking about heading north?
If I'm driving north and I turn right onto Meridian, there's a potential conflict because I'm riding across there.
On Macomb, you mean?
I'm driving on Meridian. I'm on the bike path heading north.
Okay.
And the car is also coming north and turns right onto Macomb Street as I'm crossing the street. There's no indication to a driver coming north that, beware of pedestrians or potential whatever.
Is it on Macomb? Yeah, okay.
Other comments?
When I look at that, breaking down that intersection, you have to identify responsibilities, and the driver of a vehicle will have certain responsibilities, the pedestrian has them, and then a bicyclist has them. And we hope that they all follow the order of reason on that. But I like to think that it's safer if we take it one step higher and sign it well so nobody has any doubt. You know, especially with young driver or an older driver or just somebody who isn't sure. I would like it to be signed so there's no doubt on what you need to do and what you need to be looking for. It's not required. It's probably a step above what we need to do, but it's great insurance. And ultimately, it just adds a level of safety there. And I think that's a standard I'd like to look at every time we explore something like this. I don't want to do just the minimum. I'd like to do it to a standard we feel provides good safety or above average safety on anything like that. And that's kind of my rule of thumb, err on the side of caution. A sign is a relatively cheap investment to do that, but it's important because that is a main thoroughfare for school too. And a lot of young drivers that drive there, and the sign can be priceless. And we'll never know if it's effective, because if it's effective, we don't have problems. So it's hard to gauge that, but I think we need to set our safety standard that high.
So are you recommending a sign on Meridian there to?
Anytime we can add something like a sign and give that much more additional safety to an intersection, I think it's a no-brainer. We should go for it every time, provided, you know, of course, we can pay for it and have it installed, and it works with the intersection. I don't think it's going to interfere with anything other than somebody stopping to look to see if there's a pedestrian or bicyclist there. And for us not to do it, it's kind of hard to justify not doing it.
Yeah, so just to get back on agenda here a little bit, I think the idea here is that we definitely need a maintenance plan that goes through and addresses, you know, things like bushes, sight distances, extra signage, and that's part of the goal that we just need to get, get our hands wrapped around.
I think you're right. We need to get moving with that.
I think what I could do that might help, maybe I can get a map of the island and break it up into sections, and so each of us can take a section and go and note what we think are maybe the most problematic things, the most room for improvement, and then we can use that to prioritize the maintenance plan. And because all of this will cost money, and we just saw that.
Yeah, that's a very good idea. We just need to get a list of the issues and then determine how we want to attack them. And I think it's a great suggestion on how to get that, at least get it kicked off.
And so everyone would be okay with that if they just had a little section that they had to.
Any issue?
And
Or only on safety? What about crumbling pavement or a tree? It could be anything that we can affect.
I would say any issue, and then maybe we would hold another study session to prioritize. So I'll start with the map, and we'll make our points, and then we'll go from there.
Good idea.
I'm going to strike the possible blog, if that's okay with everybody. I think because we are so new, we're still kind of getting the word out, and we already have a few ways to contact us. It might just be confusing if we add something else.
All right.
Also, we have Facebook that binds that up. Maybe that will be good enough for now.
I think there are a lot of, and we have our website through the Grocio website. There's a link there. They can email us, so I think there are a lot of avenues. Obviously, anyone can show up to our meeting, so I think that would just be confusing. And then the last one, the bike rack locations. I noticed in our packet we actually have some really nice literature. I don't know, did Brian put that together? I did. You did? Oh, this is wonderful. I actually was going to ask why did you choose this manufacturer in particular?
Because it popped up.
That's an example? Okay.
It came about.
Okay, well, I think we've been doing a lot of the same research. Do you want to?
No, go ahead.
Oh, no. Do you want to work together on this?
Sure, that's fine. It was just my attempt to get it moving, I guess.
Okay, no, that's
Somebody
great.
told me we had a bike rack at Kroger, and I didn't even know it, and that's how it started.
I didn't, I saw in here all these different bike racks, and the only one I ever noticed was the Wave bike rack at Coney Island. So maybe we can get together outside then and work on this.
Mr. Bailey, this was very nicely put together, and for those of you at home, we do have several bike racks on the island, and we all learned where they were. Kroger's has one, although it's hidden from time to time. I think they move it towards the front of the store in the winter, and then in the summer they hide it way in towards the far east side of the parking lot. Save on Drugs also has one by the entrance. The Coney Island has one. Vitelli's and the Fifth Third Bank, and I'd like to thank all of those merchants for having a bike path or a bike rack, and I would encourage other folks on the island who have businesses to look at purchasing and putting up a bike rack as well. It's a lot more pleasing to the eye than seeing 3 or 4 bikes in front of your store throwing down. And as someone who rides bikes, I appreciate the opportunity to put my bike in a rack when I come shopping versus leaning it up against a tree or something. So I would encourage those who are thinking about that to do so. And we have a packet here with several different types of bike racks and the reasons why you would want to maybe use some of those bike racks differently or purchase different ones. So if any of you are interested in doing that, please reach out to us and we'll provide you this documentation.
Are you going to be maybe adding a bike rack on the new beach that we have?
The question was, are we going to add a bike rack to the new bike path that we're putting in?
Park.
Oh, the park.
The new park at the beach. Someone made a comment about putting a bike rack there.
I think that would be a great idea to put a bike rack there. I don't know if that would come out of us or the township itself.
Yeah, it's a good question. There's the grand opening is actually next Monday, the 22nd. That park will have the purview of the Recreation Commission as far as funding and other things. So I think it'll be incumbent on us to make a recommendation if we think, if we think it's warranted.
Maybe when Gary and I get together and talk about these bike racks, if we research manufacturers and find one that we think would be, good for the township and it'd create a uniform look for everybody, and then reach out to the different groups, the rec group, maybe the different businesses, and then offer an avenue for them to purchase them. And I guess installation would probably be another question, but I think we're not quite there yet.
I think that's a great idea. And also, we are the township has got a little pocket park that they're going to be developing on Macomb. And that might be another wonderful location for a bike rack as well. So would we, again, is that going to go through the rec department for that too, or would that be the downtown business?
So right now it will be the DDA, the Downtown Development Authority. So TBD on that. The pocket park will come back up in the next meeting, if not the next meeting, the meeting after that. So we can, I'll definitely let the board know that that's something we should consider there.
The playground there, the playscape. I do not know if they have a bike rack. I don't believe they do back there.
I'm reluctant to see it. But I mean, even Township Hall and the public safety building, places like that.
Yeah, it would be nice to have those at several different locations on the island, which I think would reinforce the idea or encourage folks to continue to exercise and ride their bikes to those type of places.
Well, I think it all comes into the PAC assessment, doesn't it?
It goes into it very in-depthly on just about every aspect. It's an anti-theft prevention where, you have to have something to chain your bike to. I mean, it serves more than one purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Other comments? All right. Item number 12 is the letters to the newspapers that were written recently. We've had several requests from residents about what is the right etiquette for riding and walking on the paths, and some discussion about the Safe Routes to School, which there was a Safe Routes to School Day, October 3rd. There were in the Eel Cameron and the News Herald letters written by Brian, I believe, talking about some of those things. The Eel Cameron was September 27th, and then the News Herald, walk and roll volunteers are needed to help reboot walk to school program, was October 4th. And both of those were very well written, and just a sampling of what we're hoping to continue to do with our education and outreach to the community. You want to comment on any of that before we talk about the next thing? All right. Lastly, on this subject, we have guidelines for safe walking at Halloween. There was a walking guideline from a community, Chapel Hill, North Carolina. It's a lot of common sense, but it's a lot of good points talking about the Halloween, making sure that you have your children in costumes that they can see out of. Also about where they should be walking, what they should be wearing, obviously, highly visible type of clothes if possible. Walking where it's lit. I know that's a challenge because there's not a lot of street lights in the Grosse Hill community. A lot of people don't like the street lights. Some people like that there's no street lights, but on this one night it is kind of a dangerous thing because you have hundreds of kids running out of their mind on their sugar highs trying to get more candy before the 8 o'clock bell. So just want to make sure that you're all aware of that you're all planning for that with lights on around your house, and be looking out for kids if you're driving that night especially. Be very conscious of being safe and slow. And again, these guidelines, we will put this document out there on our website so you can link to it. It's got a lot of good common sense ideas for Halloween and beyond. I believe that is the end of the agenda.
That is the end of the agenda. I thought there was one more thing, and I apologize for not bringing this up at the beginning of the meeting, and I thought this was on the chair's report. The Open Space Committee has asked us to have a liaison. It would be a non-voting liaison to the Open Space Committee, just someone that meets with them. And I think their thinking is that there's there's a lot of controversy over trails or not trails in open space, and they just like a little input from our commission. So I've been asked to see if there's any volunteers from our commission to be a liaison with the Open Space Commission.
And what time and date are their meetings?
I knew that question was coming. I don't have it. I believe it's the second Tuesday at 5 o'clock, but I'm not positive.
Yeah. Can we rotate that?
That's not a bad idea either.
I mean, I know Brian serves on another committee, and Eric, you're going to be real busy, I assume. Most of us have lives, but and wives. So it might be more amenable to some of us if you could rotate through, so to speak, or take turns or whatever.
That's not a bad suggestion. If it was later in the evening, I would volunteer for it, but 5 o'clock is trying to get home by
Let's put that on the next agenda, and we'll have all the details before it. It's not on the action item today anyway, so we can think about how we want to handle that.
All right. One thing I did want to bring up tonight was regarding Horsemill and the fact that as we cross Horsemill and go to Park Lane, because of the need to have a receiving entry onto the road, once you get onto the road, you have to have a way to get back off the road. We were looking to have Grosse Hill Presbyterian Church allow us to utilize their property. Don't know if we actually need to get on their property, but even if it's just the easement, we would need to get on their property to do the work. Their elders are meeting tonight, and they're aware of our wishes, and they're going to be discussing it in some detail. Knowing what we want to do there is really just basically put a cement apron on the corner there so that we meet the letter of the law. So we'll have more about that at next meeting as well. Are there any other agenda items or discussion points that we'd like to make tonight? None? Do we have anyone here who would like to speak tonight from the public? I'm seeing head shake no. Going, gone. Last opportunity. You want to get home and watch the Tiger game. I know. Okay. So hearing no additional action items, I'm asking for a motion to close the meeting.
Before we get there, just one thing, I think we need to set a meeting date for the next meeting.
Oh, yes, yes.
So normally we would just be on the third Tuesday of the month. The issue is that the next third Tuesday is the week of Thanksgiving. So, and then the Tuesday after that is right before the Christmas break. So the question is do we want to have our next meeting not be until January, which would be the 15th?
I think that's an awful long time to go. Maybe we have some working meetings in between to make sure that we've closed the loops on some of these things in like subcommittees. You know,
That sounds like a long time to wait.
It does.
Personally, I certainly agree with the schedule, the holiday issue that you've raised. I would certainly like to see one meeting during that time frame anyways.
A motion that we even consider that we survey the path for our initial survey Aaron spoke of and start evaluating it for the issues and standards on maintenance that we can do. Technically, I think that could almost be a full meeting.
I would suggest we leave the November meeting as is and see what, Brian sent out notices that he wasn't going to be able to attend, and if you don't have a quorum, you don't have a meeting, I guess.
So keep it set for the 20th?
Yeah, I would recommend that, but I'll
be gone.
Yeah, I mean, some people will.
I'll be gone too.
Back to St. Louis.
so it sounds like we
How
got...
about 27th? I'll be back.
Yeah, the problem with once we're on a set meeting schedule, without calling a special meeting, then we got to make sure that the TV crew's ready and the boardroom's ready and everything else. So it becomes very difficult just to reschedule the meetings.
Why don't we...
Study sessions are easy to do.
Why don't we make it a study session on the 20th, and at that time we can, if Aaron can get us those maps, maybe we could do some of our homework between now and then and start to compile that list on the 20th.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we've got the room and everything else set on the 20th, so it could be a study session or it could be a regular meeting.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
So we'll hold the meeting on the 20th. Do we want to make it a study session and announce that now, or do we want to...
Now, are you saying do the map ahead of time and then give the group our results before I go out? Okay.
Yeah, what I was recommending is that we would get the maps out to the team. We would do our homework, and on that date we would come back or provide that homework back to the group that we would be able to meet in the study session, and that group would compile that information. And so we at least make that next step to say, here's all that we've identified.
Okay, so we'll come up with something and then we'll give it to you written down.
And then we would compile that, and then we could share that, and then maybe by the next meeting we would actually prioritize, or I don't know, but at least we would have collected the information as a starting point. All right, so we'll make it a study session on that 20th, and our goal will be to have our area of the island identified for issues. Okay? All right.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Um,
Motion carried. All right. Do I have a motion to close this month's meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.